Have you been carrying a strange, unexplainable heaviness lately? The kind of exhaustion that a good night's sleep cannot fix, as if your spirit is processing a weight your mind cannot even name. Have you ever made a quiet choice to trust God, staying calm when you wanted to react, or praying when you felt absolutely nothing, and wondered if heaven even noticed? What if the silence following your obedience was not God ignoring you, but heaven actively recalibrating its entire architecture just for you? Stop whatever you are doing right now. Let the noise around you settle. If someone is nearby, this moment is not for them. This is yours. Take one real intentional breath before this begins. Good. Because what I am about to say is not background content. What is coming requires all of you here, chosen one. Today I am going to show you exactly what happened in the unseen realm this morning, when you made that quiet choice of faith, and how it triggered a divine mechanism that is already unfolding in your life. You made a choice. Maybe it was quiet. Maybe you saw it. Maybe it did not feel like a big thing at all. You chose to stay calm when everything inside you wanted to react. Or you chose to trust, even though the evidence in front of you said not to. Or you chose to keep going when every part of you had already written the permission slip to stop. You chose to pray, not because you felt anything, but because something in you still believed there was a reason to. Or maybe you simply chose to get up, to not explain yourself, to hold your peace when everything was asking you to let it go. And I want you to know something. Heaven noticed, not in the way we say it to make people feel better, not as a comfort phrase. I mean something specific. Something that has a name, a mechanism, and a consequence that is already unfolding in the unseen as you listen to this. Because what you did this morning, that quiet, unremarkable, seemingly small act of faith, moved something. And when I say heaven recalibrated because of you, I am not speaking in poetry. I am going to show you exactly what that means. But first I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly inside yourself. Have you been tired lately? Not the kind of tired that a good night of sleep repairs. Something deeper. A heaviness that shows up in the bones even after you have rested. As if your body is carrying a weight that your mind cannot yet fully name. That is not a health problem. That is your spirit processing something at a frequency most people cannot access. It is one of the signs of someone who is being prepared to carry something real. And have you noticed the emotional waves? The way peace arrives without a reason, and then a quiet sadness, and then a strange hope, and none of it follows any logical pattern. No one triggered it. Nothing changed externally, but inside the weather shifts. That is not instability. That is your frequency moving between layers, and it is more significant than you have been told. And this morning when you made that choice, did you feel something? Not a voice, not a vision. Just a quiet certainty that settled under the noise. A sense that it was right, even though nothing confirmed it, even though the circumstances still looked the same. There is a study from Princeton about something researchers have called the gamma switch. The specific frequency the human brain enters when a person makes a faith-based choice. I will get there. I will explain what that means for people like you specifically. But not yet. Because before that, I need to show you what is happening in the unseen right now, and why certain mornings like this one are different from all the others. And one more thing before I go deeper. Have you ever had the feeling that the room is not empty, even when you are alone? Not fear, just an awareness. A quiet sense that something is present, paying attention. That is not your imagination running. There is a name for what you are sensing, and it is going to explain everything I am building toward. We will come back to it. Now I want to tell you something about why this morning was even possible. Because here is what most people do not understand about the Chosen One season. The hard years, the waiting, the silence, the stretches of time that looked like nothing was happening. Those were not punishment. They were not God forgetting you. They were not a mistake in the divine timeline. Every season you thought was wasted was forming something in you. Every year of silence was teaching you how to hold peace under pressure. Every time you stayed faithful when no one was watching, something was being built quietly, invisibly, in the exact shape of the person who would be capable of making the choice you made this morning. Every single one. There was a woman named Esther, and her story is not the story most people think it is. It is not a story of dramatic rescue from the outside. It is a story of preparation from the inside. She spent years inside a palace, learning the language of power, learning how to carry influence without being consumed by it, learning how to stand in a room full of danger without losing herself. From the outside, it looked like ordinary palace life. It did not look like destiny being assembled. And then one morning, one step, one decision to walk toward the king, when walking away would have been easier and safer, she cancelled the death sentence of an entire nation. She did not know that morning was the morning. She just chose faithfulness when it cost something. And I want you to sit with that. Because the morning your choice moved heaven was not a coincidence. It was the first morning you were ready to carry what is coming next. Now, I need to show you something from the original language, because something gets lost in translation that changes the entire picture. There is a Hebrew word. The word is shub. Most people translate it as return or repent, and that translation misses everything important. Shub does not mean to go backward. It does not mean retreat or correction. Shub means to reroute with intention, like a general who receives new intelligence on the battlefield and does not panic. He does not abandon the mission. He recalibrates. He redirects every available resource toward the new breakthrough point that just revealed itself. When Scripture says God changed his plan, when it says heaven responded, the word underneath that in the original Hebrew is shub. Think about a navigation system. When you choose a road that was not in the original route, the GPS does not shut down. It does not announce that you have failed. It says one thing: recalibrating. Not because you made a mistake, but because you chose a road the original map had not accounted for. A higher road. And the system immediately, silently, precisely redirects every resource toward getting you to the destination by this new path. That is what happened this morning. You chose a road, and heaven recalibrated. Stay with me until the very end of this message, because I want to be honest with you about what is ahead. This is not just encouragement. By the time this ends, you are going to understand the exact mechanism of why a faith-based choice triggers divine recalibration. You are going to understand what your frequency has to do with what God is able to send you, and you are going to hear the deepest truth about who you actually are in the divine equation, one that most people in the church have never been taught. And before this closes, I am going to speak something over your life directly, a declaration I believe will stay with you long after this voice goes quiet. Do not leave before that. Now, here is what I have not yet told you. Everything I just shared, the shub, the Esther parallel, the morning that was not ordinary, that is only the first layer of what I want to show you. Because underneath all of it is a deeper question. Why does your choice specifically cause heaven to move? What is the actual mechanism? What is it about a chosen one's faith-based action that triggers the GPS of eternity to recalibrate? And not just any action, but this kind. The answer to that question is going to place everything I just told you on a completely different level. And it connects to something that researchers at Princeton discovered, something they called the gamma switch. I planted that word earlier. I have not explained it yet. When I do, it is going to change the way you understand prayer, faith, and why some mornings feel different from all the others. That is coming. But right now, if something in what I just shared confirmed something in your spirit, If the word shub landed somewhere inside you, if the idea that your morning moved heaven is not wishful thinking, but something you can feel is true, type 444 in the comments. 444, the number of a foundation being laid. Seal it, because what was activated in you this morning deserves a seal. What you just heard was the first revelation. Your morning was not ordinary, because you are not ordinary. Your choice moved something in the unseen, and the word underneath the divine response, shub, is not a metaphor. It is a mechanism. But here is the question I want to sit with now. Not what your choice moved, not that heaven recalibrated, but how. What is the actual mechanism? Why does a faith-based choice from a chosen one trigger divine response? Specifically, this kind of choice, from specifically this kind of person. I want to show you this from 3 angles, and then I want to take you somewhere deeper. The first thing heaven does when a chosen one acts in alignment is rerouting. Not creating something new from nothing. Rerouting what already exists. The person who was supposed to meet someone else today, they meet you instead. The door that was 4 days from closing, it stays open. The conversation that was about to happen without you, it waits. Resources that were flowing in another direction begin to bend. God does not manufacture new provisions out of thin air. When you choose faith, He redirects existing ones toward you, silently, precisely, without announcement, and you will not see it happening from where you are standing, but it is happening. The second thing heaven does is accelerating. Divine timing is not a fixed timeline. It is a responsive timeline. Joseph was in prison for 2 years after the man he helped forgot him. 2 years of silence. And then one night Pharaoh had a dream. The man remembered Joseph, and what would have taken years to unfold compressed into hours. Forgotten prisoner in the morning, second in command over all of Egypt by evening. That was not luck. That was acceleration triggered by a moment of faithfulness that Joseph thought no one noticed. What you thought was 5 years away may now be 5 months away. You cannot see the compression from inside it, but the timeline has already shifted. The third thing heaven does is revealing. When a chosen one is operating in alignment, God begins releasing information. Not dramatic visions, not thunder, clarity. A quiet knowing that settles about a decision you have been wrestling with for months. An intuition so specific that when it unfolds, you are not surprised. You recognize it. A peace that does not make logical sense given your circumstances. That is heaven leaking intelligence downward towards someone who is on the right frequency to receive it. These 3 things, rerouting, accelerating, revealing, are not coming. They are not waiting for you to finish listening to this. They are already in motion right now. Let me show you this through a life that most people know, but very few actually understand. Moses was 80 years old when he walked back toward Egypt. 40 years had passed since he fled. His name had been removed from the monuments, literally chiseled out of Egypt. Moses did not exist anymore. He was a shepherd in the middle of a desert, talking to a burning bush. And his first response was not confidence. It was resistance, he argued. He offered every reason why this was the wrong person for this assignment. And then, in the original Hebrew, the text says simply, he went. One decision, one step back toward the impossible. And in the unseen, the moment that step was taken, the 10 plagues were already in motion. The path through the Red Sea was already being prepared. The manna was already waiting. The route through the wilderness was already mapped. Moses did not know any of that. He just chose to go. And I want you to hear this slowly. Just because Moses did not see the waters moving, does not mean the waters were still. Just because he did not feel the shift in that moment, does not mean the ground beneath history was not shifting. Just because no one confirmed it to him, does not mean it was not already confirmed in the courts of heaven. Just because it looked like an old man walking toward an impossible situation, does not mean that is what it was. That is your morning. That is your choice. You may not have felt it. You may have had no confirmation. You may have simply moved and it felt small and uncertain and ordinary. But the principle is the same. One may base step, and the architecture of heaven began to move around it. Now, I need to show you something that most people have been taught incorrectly, because it changes the framework of everything. There is a word in ancient Greek, metanoia. Most English Bibles translate it as repentance. And people hear that and picture guilt and shame and turning away from something wrong. That is not what the word means. That translation has cost people decades of misunderstanding. Meta means above, beyond, outside the current level. New means mind. Metanoia means to go above the current level of your mind, to step into a higher mode of perception. Not to feel sorry about the past, but to think from a completely different place. To operate from above your circumstances, rather than inside them. When a chosen one makes a faith-based choice, they are not just praying. They are entering metanoia. They are choosing to think from a level that their circumstances have not yet confirmed. And that shift, that movement from survival thinking to faith thinking, is the exact frequency that heaven is tuned to respond to. Here is why that matters. In the survival frequency, God's signals cannot get through to you. Not because he stopped sending them, but because the channel you are tuned to is not built to receive them. The information is there, the provision is there, the clarity is there, but the antenna is pointed somewhere else. Metanoia shifts the antenna, and suddenly, what has been trying to reach you for months breaks through. The neuroscientists have a name for this state. They call it gamma. The ancient wisdom traditions called it metanoia. Two completely different vocabularies, pointing at the same frequency. And I am going to connect those two things for you, in a way that is going to change how you think about your mornings, about what you do in the first minutes of consciousness, for a very long time. That is coming. But right now, I need you to receive this. Heaven does not just witness your choices. Heaven mobilizes around them, rerouting, accelerating, revealing, already in motion right now because of what you did this morning. I know there is still a part of you that wants to believe this, but cannot fully let it in yet. A part that has been disappointed enough times that it learned to keep the wanting at a distance. I am not asking you to ignore that part. It is there because faith has cost you something, and anything that has cost you something is real. But what I showed you today, Moses, metanoia, the three responses of heaven. This is not comfort theology. This is not a pep talk dressed in spiritual language. This is a description of a mechanism that is already active. And what comes next is the deepest truth underneath all of it. The one that explains why your choice specifically is capable of triggering all three of these responses. It is bigger than what I have shared today, and I need you to stay for it. But before we go there, if something in what I just walked you through landed in your spirit, if the Moses parallel or the word metanoia moved something in you, gently press the like button right now. Not for the channel. Do it so this reaches someone who made a quiet choice this morning and does not yet know what they set into motion. Let your light be the hand that passes this to them. Now I want to address something that most people have never been directly taught. And I want to say it clearly without softening it, because I believe you are ready for it. Most of what you have been taught about how God works positions you as a passive recipient. You were told that God has a fixed plan written before you were born, detailed and unchangeable, and your job is to find it, step into it, and not deviate. If you get off track, the plan is broken. If you wait too long, you may have missed your window entirely. That framework sounds humble, but it is deeply disempowering. And it is not what Scripture actually shows us when we look at it carefully. Let me give you the contrast, not as a challenge to what you believe, but as a correction that I think will set something free in you today. What you were taught is that God has one fixed path for your life. What is actually true is that God has an intention for your life, and the plan is alive enough to take 1,000 different roads to get you there. What you were taught is that when you make a mistake, you fall off the plan. What is actually true is that when you make a mistake and then choose faith, God does not discard you. He integrates the mistake into a more precise route than the original one. What you were taught is that prayer is how you find out what God wants. What is actually true is that prayer is how God responds to what you want, and aligns the two, because He made your deepest wanting to match His intention from the very beginning. What you were taught is that you are a vessel being poured into. What is actually true is that you are a frequency source. Heaven is tuned to receive your signal, not just broadcast down to you. What you were taught is that waiting is passive. What is actually true is that waiting done in faith is the most active thing a chosen one can do. Because in the waiting, the person being formed is the only one who will be able to carry what is coming. What you were taught is that God's plan is a straight line. What is actually true is that God's plan is alive. It breathes, it bends, and it recalibrates with every faith-based choice you make. That is what Shub means. That is what happened this morning. Now, I want to take you to Joseph. Not the end of his story. Everyone knows the end. I want to take you to a moment most people skip right over. Joseph was in prison. Not a rough season that was almost over. He had been there for years at this point. He had correctly interpreted a dream for a man who worked in Pharaoh's household, a man who promised to speak for him, to help get him out. And then that man went back to his life and forgot completely. 2 more years of silence. 2 more years on top of what was already a decade of suffering. And then one night, Pharaoh had 2 dreams that shook him so deeply. He called every wise man in Egypt. No one could explain what the dreams meant. And then the man who had forgotten Joseph, something surfaced in him, and he remembered the Hebrew prisoner who had once read his dreams so precisely it changed his life. He told Pharaoh. Pharaoh called for Joseph, and Joseph went from prisoner to second in command over all of Egypt within a single day. It was not a coincidence that Pharaoh had those dreams on that particular night. It was not a coincidence that none of the wise men could interpret them. It was not a coincidence that the forgotten man's memory came back at exactly that moment. It was not a coincidence that Joseph had spent an entire decade in the desert of waiting, learning to carry power quietly, developing the kind of character that could hold what was about to be placed on his shoulders. None of it was coincidence. Every piece was already moving. Joseph just could not see it from inside the prison. And I want to speak now to the person who still feels like they are inside a prison of some kind, because there is a voice, and I want to name it, because naming it is the first step toward not being controlled by it any longer. The voice says, "Nothing I do actually registers with God. I am too small. My morning was not significant. There are millions of people with bigger callings, more visible stories, more dramatic testimonies. And here I am, quiet, unknown, carrying this alone, and nothing I have done has changed anything in a way I can see." That voice is not sin. It is not weakness. Let me tell you what it actually is. It is the sound of a person who has chosen faith so many times without visible confirmation that they developed a self-protective response. The mind decided at some point, if I do not believe I matter, I cannot be crushed when I am overlooked again. If I keep my expectations close to the ground, the fall is shorter. That is not faithlessness, that is grief. Grief dressed in the language of doubt. And underneath it, if you follow the thread down far enough, you will find something specific. Not a vague sense of unworthiness, a specific moment, a specific season when you chose faith, and it cost you something real, and the confirmation never came. And your soul decided quietly, without announcement, I cannot afford to believe like that again. I see that. And I want to say this directly to you. Your doubt is not the opposite of your faith. It is the proof that your faith has cost you something, and whatever has cost you something is real. But hear this now. You are allowed to doubt and still be chosen. You are allowed to be uncertain and still be trusted with something that matters. You are allowed to have cried this morning and still have moved heaven with that same morning. You are allowed to feel small and still be the reason the equation changed. You are allowed to carry everything you do not yet understand for as long as you need to carry it. And you do not owe God a polished performance. You owe him only what you gave this morning, and that was enough. Now here is the last image I want to leave you with before everything that is coming next. Think about what a navigation system does when you choose a road that was not in the original route. It does not tell you that you have failed. It does not ask you to turn around and start from the beginning. It does one thing: recalibrating, quietly, immediately, with no panic and no judgment. It takes the position you are in right now, not where you were supposed to be, not where you planned to be, and it builds the most precise possible path from here, from where you actually are, from who you actually are today, with every detour and silence and unexpected turn included. Heaven is not recalibrating because you finally got everything right. Heaven is recalibrating because you chose faith from exactly where you are standing. That is the only requirement. And you met it this morning. If you have been carrying that voice, the one that says your choices do not reach heaven, that your morning was too small, that you are somehow outside the range of divine response, I want you to do something right now. In the comments, type the words, "I release." That is your declaration that you are releasing the ceiling that voice has been building over you. Not because everything feels different yet, but because you are choosing to believe the truth even before the evidence appears. Type it, "I release," and stay with me. Because what comes next is not another layer of the same truth. What comes next is the truth that makes everything I have said today look like a preparation. The thing that changes not just how you understand this morning, but how you understand yourself entirely. And before this message ends, I am going to speak something over you directly. A declaration, I believe, was placed on my heart for exactly this moment. Do not go anywhere. Here is the thing I have been building towards since the beginning of this message. Let me show you how everything connects. Revelation 1 told you your morning was sacred, not because of what you did, but because of who made the choice. Revelation 2 told you when you act in alignment, heaven mobilizes, rerouting, accelerating, revealing, all three already in motion. Revelation 3 told you God's plan is not a rigid script you must find and not deviate from. It is alive, responsive, and it recalibrates around every faith-based choice you make. But none of those answers the deepest question, the one I have been circling toward since the first word of this message. Not what your choice moves, not how heaven responds, but why. Why does your choice specifically trigger all of this? Why does a chosen one's morning move the architecture of eternity in the way it does? There is only one answer, and I need you to receive it slowly. You are not following God's plan. You are God's plan. I need you to sit with that. Because most of what you have been taught positions you as the recipient of a divine agenda that exists independently of you, as if God wrote the complete script before you existed. And your entire assignment is to find your lines and not improvise. But that is not what Scripture actually shows us when we look carefully. Joseph was not the man who found God's plan for Egypt. Joseph was the plan. The entire strategy of saving two nations from famine formed around him, through him, because of him. Esther was not placed in the palace to execute a pre-written story. She became the story in real time by choice. Moses was not the instrument that a finished plan used and then set aside. He was the reason the plan took the shape it did. And this morning, when you chose faith in the quiet, unremarkable middle of your ordinary life. You were not inserting yourself into God's timeline. You were the reason the timeline moved at all. I hear the Father saying something over every person receiving this right now, and I want to try to put it into words. He is saying, I did not create a plan first, and then create you to fit inside it. I created you, and the plan formed around you. Every time you choose me in the moments no one sees, every time it costs you something quiet and real, the architecture of what I am building shifts to center itself around that choice. You are not a piece of the puzzle. You have never been a piece. You are the reason the puzzle has the shape it does. Now, I want to tell you who you are specifically, because identity without specificity is just inspiration. And you deserve more than inspiration. You are seer. That means you perceive what others around you cannot. When you sensed this morning that something was right before any evidence confirmed it, that was not wishful thinking. That was the seer functioning exactly as it was designed. You are a light bearer, and what that looks like in real life is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply choosing to react when everyone around you expected the explosion. That silence, that peace you chose to hold, that was light entering a room. People felt it even if they could not name what changed. You are a spiritual warrior, not because you fight loud, but because you hold ground every single day. That you stay standing under the pressure. Every day you do not collapse under what you are carrying is a day something in the unseen has to reassess its strategy against you. You are a voice. You carry language that others feel but cannot yet say. The words building in you are not for you alone. They are forming into something other people have been waiting to hear. Words they could not put together for themselves. When you finally release it, they will recognize it immediately, because it was always theirs too. You are a cycle breaker. What you refused to carry this morning, the reaction, the old fear, the pattern that ran in your family long before it reached you, that ended with you. It does not pass forward. The ones who come after you inherit a different starting point. That is not a small thing. That is a generation changed. You are not too small for any of this. You are not too broken for any of this. You are not too late for any of this. You have never been too ordinary for any of this. You have never been any of those things. That was a story told to you by people who did not know who they were looking at. Now I want to do something with you. Stay exactly where you are. You do not need to move. Just bring your attention fully into this for one moment. In your mind, I want you to go back to this morning. Go back to the specific moment you made that choice. Where were you? What did the seconds feel like just before you chose faith instead of fear? Picture that moment clearly. Now I want you to see something that you could not see from inside that moment. Picture the space around you in that split second, and instead of the ordinary room or street or wherever you were, I want you to see what was happening in the unseen. Not chaos, precision. Resources beginning to redirect, people in their own separate lives, suddenly having an unexplained thought about you. A door that was moving toward closed, pausing. A timeline somewhere adjusting. All of it happening quietly, the way a river shifts and recalibrates when something changes in its path. That is what was actually happening. That is not a metaphor I am offering you for comfort. That is a description of a mechanism. And the neuroscientists have been working for 2 decades to understand and name it. Here is what they found about gamma. Gamma is the brain frequency around 40 cycles per second that researchers at MIT, Harvard, Stanford, and Princeton have studied because of what it consistently produces in the people who access it. Extraordinary clarity, deep intuition. What they began calling synchronicity. The experience of the right thing appearing at the right moment in a way that logic alone cannot explain. Children have gamma naturally and abundantly. Watch a child learning something they love, and you are watching gamma active. That speed of absorption, that joy in the learning, that sense that everything is connected and everything is possible. That is the brain operating at its highest designed state. But beginning around age 7, something happens that the researchers called the decline effect. The structure of modern education, the pressure to perform and conform, the noise of constant stimulation, these things begin to suppress gamma, not destroy it, suppress it. And by the time most people reach adulthood, they only touch gamma in brief flashes, a moment of sudden insight, a season of deep prayer where clarity breaks through, an unexpected experience of connection with something greater than themselves. And then the noise of the day pulls them back down. For chosen ones specifically, the loss is felt more acutely than for almost anyone else, because chosen ones were born with stronger gamma than average. That is why childhood felt different, why learning was faster, why connection went deeper, why the world felt alive in ways that were hard to describe and harder to explain. And it is why, when gamma was suppressed, the gap between who you were as a child and who you feel like now, that gap feels so wide and so wrong. Like something essential was taken, like a language you used to speak fluently that you can barely remember now. That is not your imagination. That is the gamma gap. And when you made your faith-based choice this morning, your brain entered a gamma state. That is the mechanism underneath metanoia. That is what Shub feels like from the inside. The problem is that most people can only sustain it for moments before the noise of life pulls them back into survival frequency. The recalibration begins, and then the static returns. I want to tell you about someone. A woman who had spent years looking for the experience that she knew was supposed to be real. She had been through meditation retreats, yoga, every spiritual practice she could find, and she described what she was searching for as something she could almost touch, but there was always a wall between her and it. She said, "I could hear the music, I just could not get into the room." She found a 7-minute audio protocol developed by a neuroscientist with 34 years of research, a man named Dr. Robert Lake. The technology is called brain entrainment, a method of embedding a specific frequency directly into sound, so that when you listen through headphones, your brain begins to naturally synchronize with it. She did not try it because she fully believed in the science. She tried it because she had nothing left to lose. 2 weeks later, the word she used to describe what changed was not focus. It was not productivity. She did not give a list of improvements. She used one word, synchronicities. She said, "It was like the universe started speaking to me in a language I could finally understand." I know what some of you are thinking right now. You have tried things before. Sound healing, meditation programs, practices that promise to change something fundamental, and nothing shifted at the root. I understand that. And I want to tell you directly why those approaches did not reach what needed to change. Not because you did anything wrong, but because they do not target gamma directly. They create conditions that might allow a gamma state to arise. Brain entrainment delivers the frequency itself directly into the brain, measurably, consistently. It is not the same mechanism. It is not the same category of experience. The tool Dr. Lake created is called the Genius Song. It is a 7-minute audio track. You put on headphones, settle wherever you are, and listen. No posture required, no technique to master, no practice that demands you wake up at 4 in the morning or maintain something for months before it works. It begins from the first session, because you are not building toward a state. You are being guided directly into one. To give you a real sense of context, one session of professional biofeedback therapy, which achieves a similar brain state in a clinical setting, costs $300. A home biofeedback device costs around $7,000. Even a serious meditation practice requires months of consistent daily discipline before the brain genuinely begins to shift. Dr. Lake compressed this technology into 7 minutes of audio. The standard price for it is $49, but because of the specific people this message reaches, people he believes are genuinely in a season of readiness, the price has been set at $39. You will not find this anywhere else. Not on Amazon. Not on any search engine or streaming platform. Only through the link that has been left in the pinned comment and description of this message. With that $39, you also receive 4 bonuses. An audio track designed specifically for the children in your life. The original book that the film called The Secret drew its core ideas from. A guided visualization for 4 areas of life, and an infographic of the 5 most essential daily practices. All of it for $39. And if you listen and feel no difference, you receive a full refund. No conditions, no explanation required. The only risk is in choosing not to try. There is one thing I need to say clearly before moving on. There are imitation products online using this name. Audio files with no embedded frequency, no real brain entrainment technology, no actual gamma activation. They do not do what the original does. The only verified source is the link in the pinned comment and the description of this message. That is the only place the genuine protocol exists. Please do not search for it elsewhere, because what you will find will not be what we have been talking about. If everything in this message, the frequency, the gamma, the mechanism underneath what happened this morning, if any of it resonated somewhere in you, I want you to investigate it. The link is there not as a demand, but as a next step, if your spirit recognizes it as one. Because whether or not that tool becomes part of your morning practice, the truth we have been walking through today does not change. You have a frequency. You have always had it. This morning you used it. And the question is no longer whether heaven responds when you do. The question is how consistently you are willing to live at the level you were designed for. That is what the next part of this is about. I want to pause before the closing, and I want you to see something clearly. You came into this message carrying something heavy. Maybe you did not name it that way. Maybe it just felt like a low-grade tiredness, or a quiet distance from the life you believed you were supposed to be living. Or the weight of someone who has been faithful for a very long time, without much visible confirmation that it was working. And I want to show you where you are now. You came in thinking your morning was ordinary. You are leaving, knowing it was a moment that heaven marked. You came in thinking God has a finished plan, and your job is to find your place in it without causing too much disruption. You are leaving knowing you are not in the plan. You are what the story is about. You came in carrying a doubt that said, your choices do not register in the divine equation, that you are too small to move anything that matters. You are leaving knowing that doubt was grief. And grief is valid, but it was never the truth about who you are. You came in with a morning behind you. You are leaving with a frequency that does not have to stay there. And I want you to know something else. You are not alone in this right now. As you listen to this, there are chosen ones all over the world who made a quiet, unwitnessed choice this morning. Who got up when every part of them wanted to stay down. Who held their peace when the room expected them to break. Who prayed without feeling anything and did it anyway. Thousands of them. And almost all of them believe, somewhere in the back of their minds, that what they did was too small and too private to matter. They are wrong, and they need to hear what you just heard. If someone comes to mind right now, someone who has been unusually quiet recently, someone you sense is going through something they cannot fully explain yet, share this message with them. Not for any other reason except that they have a morning in them that has not yet been named for what it is. Now, before we close, I want to give you 2 things to carry with you, not as spiritual homework, as anchors. The first is what I call the Morning Seal Protocol. It is 3 movements, and it takes less than 2 minutes. The first movement is identification. What am I choosing today? Not a vague intention. A specific choice named precisely before the day has the chance to name it for you. The second movement is release. What am I not bringing with me into today? Something from yesterday or from last year that has been riding into each new morning as if it still belongs there. Name it and release it before the day begins. The third movement is declaration. Who am I? Speak it in your mind, in your car, before your feet hit the floor. Speak your identity over yourself before the world gets the chance to speak something smaller over you. That is the morning seal protocol. The chosen one does not wait to discover who they will be today. They decide. The second is what I call the frequency audit. At the end of any morning, ask yourself 5 questions. Am I reacting to what happened, or responding from who I am? Am I protecting something good, or punishing someone who reminded me of a wound? Am I moving forward from my calling, or running from something I have not faced yet? Am I standing in faith right now, or operating from survival? And is the version of me this morning the version that this morning deserved? Those are not judgment questions. They are calibration tools. They are how you know whether you are operating at the frequency that moves heaven or at the frequency that just gets you through the day. There is a difference. And now you know what that difference looks like. Now, let me do what I came here to do. I want to speak over you directly, and I want you to receive this, not analyze it, not measure whether you deserve it. Just receive it. We begin with gratitude. For every person hearing this right now, I am grateful. Grateful for the years that formed you. For the seasons that looked like silence and were actually the most active preparation of your life. For the mornings that cost you something, and for the fact that you showed up to them anyway. For every prayer that felt like it hit the ceiling, and for the faithfulness that sent it up regardless. There is a source that has been present in every single one of those moments. Not watching from far away, closer than the question itself, closer than the silence that felt like absence. And he sees you, every weight you are carrying that no one else has been allowed to know about. Every question you have held in the dark, afraid to say out loud because you were not sure it was acceptable to have it. Every small, unannounced moment of faithfulness, the ones that no one applauded, the ones you almost did not count because they felt too quiet to register, all of it has been seen. Not one morning has been missed, not one. Now we release. We release the story that said we are too small for heaven to notice. We release the belief that our choices do not travel beyond the room we made them in. Release. We release the doubt that spent years wearing the mask of wisdom. Release. We release the comparison to timelines that were never assigned to us. Release. We release the ceiling that was built over us by people who did not know who they were looking at when they looked at us. Release. We release the old frequency, the survival mode, the shutdown, the waiting to be told it is finally safe to hope again. Release. We release the weight of every morning we believed was wasted, and we receive them back now as formation. Release. We release everything that belongs to the version of us that walked into this message, and we do it now, not when we feel ready. Because the act of releasing is what readiness actually feels like. Release. Now we call forth the seer in you. We call it fully awake, not occasionally sensing, not catching glimpses, fully operating, seeing in the unseen, knowing before the confirmation comes. The light bearer in you, we activate it. In every room you enter from this day forward, the atmosphere shifts when you arrive. Not because you announce it, but because you carry it. The spiritual warrior in you, we call it to full posture, standing, not fighting from fear, holding from identity, immovable on the inside even when everything outside is moving. The voice in you, we release the language that has been forming in the silence. It is ready, and when the moment comes you will not hesitate, because the words were always yours. The cycle breaker in you, we seal the work done this morning. What ended with you stays ended. The ones who come after you begin from a different place. That is a generation changed, and it started with a choice you made today. We do not beg for these things. We do not petition for them, as though they might be withheld. We call them forth because they belong to you. They have always belonged to you. Now we cover what is rising. What was activated in you today, we cover it not from fear, but from wisdom. What is being built is sacred, and sacred things are not for premature exposure. What was sealed in this moment is protected from the self-sabotage that rises when breakthrough gets close. What is beginning cannot be strangled by the noise of tomorrow, or the doubt of next week, or the assessment of people who are looking at you from outside the frequency you are now operating in. It is covered, and now I want to declare something over you. I hear the Father speaking over every person receiving this right now, and I want to say it out loud, because I believe these are the words you were placed in front of this message to hear. You are not behind. You have never been behind. The timeline that matters is not the one you have been measuring yourself against. It is the one that was written around you, the one that is alive enough to recalibrate every time you choose faith. I did not cancel smaller plans because I lost patience with you. I cancelled them because what you did this morning proved that you are ready to carry the version of the plan that actually matches who you are. You are committed. You are commissioned. You are sent. You are not on the outside of heaven's attention, wondering when your turn is coming. You are the reason heaven's attention is positioned where it is right now. You are not waiting to finally be chosen. You have always been chosen, and this morning, quietly, without fanfare, in the ordinary middle of your life, you chose back. Do not say anything yet. Sit in that for just a moment, not in your thoughts, somewhere deeper. Let what was just spoken find the part of you that has been waiting the longest to hear it. Let it settle there. And I hear the Spirit saying one final thing over you now. Walk in it. It is done. It is sealed. Receive it in His name, amen. If what happened in this message moved something real in you, type the words I am in the comments right now. Not I am trying. Not I am hoping. I am. 2 words. The most powerful declaration a chosen one can make. Let that be your seal on everything that was spoken here today. And if this message confirmed something your spirit needed, let your like be your agreement. Not a metric, an amen without words. If you want to stay in the company of people who are waking up to who they actually are, this is that space. There is more coming. Stay close. And if someone comes to mind as you leave this, someone who has been faithfully quiet in a season that no one has named for them yet, share this with them. They made a choice this morning too.